Wages.
Crowds of protesters and supporters stood for hours to see former President Donald Trump. Trump arrived this afternoon, stopping at Café Du Monde in the French Quarter on his way to a fundraiser in Metairie.
We were shocked. I know he was coming.
Tonight, we break down his visit in New Orleans. Good evening, I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Meg Gatta. We'll get to the former president's visit in just a minute. But first, we're following breaking news of a fire at a Cleco substation.
Yeah, crews are actively working on restoring power to thousands of customers. Cleco tells us the fire at the substation caused more than 17,000 customers to lose power. The fire started around 7:30 this evening. About an hour later, firefighters helped put out the flames. Right now, Cleco does not know the cause. And as Cleco crews are working to restore power, their outage map says currently there are over 8,500 customers still in the dark tonight. A company spokesperson could not give a hard time for when everyone will have their lights turned back on. We are following some more breaking news right now. The NOPD arrests a woman who allegedly stole a car this afternoon from the French Quarter with a 10-year-old boy inside. Police say the boy's father left him in the vehicle with the car running while he went into a business on South Peters around 4 this afternoon. A woman later identified as Shanita Baker jumped in the vehicle and took off with the boy. Officers spotted the vehicle a short time later on Gentilly Boulevard and arrested Baker. The boy was uninjured. Baker is now in the Orleans Justice Center, and the police department is urging parents not to leave their children in the car for any amount of time. Back now to our top story. Former President Donald Trump made a stop in the New Orleans metro area this evening for a fundraiser at the home of a longtime GOP supporter.
David Jones is live in Metairie, where the fundraiser took place, and he joins us now to break down Trump's visit.
Yeah, Megan Lee, the former president landed around 5 o'clock this afternoon. His first stop was Café Du Monde, where he said hi to workers and tourists in the famed French Quarter restaurant. And then he headed here to Metairie, to the house of real estate developer Joe Cannizzaro for a fundraiser. The visit to New Orleans began with Trump's plane touching down at Armstrong International. The former president was greeted by a crowd of supporters on the tarmac, where he signed autographs and took pictures with fans.
I'm sure he will do well in the state. He always has and likely always will.
His first stop, Café Du Monde, where the former president greeted French Quarter workers and tourists.
Hello, everybody. That's a nice crowd, nice friendly crowd.
Trump was asked about the possibility of a third indictment against him.
President, any thoughts on the upcoming possible indictment?
I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything. We have a crooked nation. We have a lot of crooked people running our nation, and our country is failing, and we have to turn it around. So that's very important.
The former president was accompanied by Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry, the GOP frontrunner for governor.
No, we know he was coming.
Not really. No, at the last minute.
Much better in person.
After Trump departed to Metairie, where he mingled with wealthy supporters at the home of well-known real estate developer Joe Cannizzaro. Cannizzaro worked with Trump's Louisiana campaign in the past and is a major GOP supporter. A small group of protesters gathered outside the old Metairie home.
Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up!
The protesters marched the streets of Old Metairie, looking to make their point known.
He feels very comfortable in an extremely wealthy neighborhood like this. He feels comfortable around people who can pay $23,000 to get into his event. And we're here to make him just a little bit more uncomfortable.
The state GOP has not yet endorsed any candidates for president in the 2024 race. Trump's visit to Louisiana today comes as he's facing criminal charges for his handling of classified U.S. documents after he left the White House following his loss to President Joe Biden. For now, reporting live in Metairie, David Jones, Fox 8, Local First.